Welcome to another episode of Spilling the Tea. This is the talk show where we get behind the issues by sharing real stories as told by real people. I'm Anna P. Santos. I'm Rappler's sex and gender columnist. And today we're discussing teen pregnancy. The Philippines has one of the highest teen pregnancy rates in the world. And this was even before the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, lockdown restrictions related to curbing the spread of COVID-19 threaten to aggravate the problem of teen pregnancy even further. I'm joined by my co-host, Jonah Toralde. Hi, Jonah.
Hello, Anna. Finally,
Jonah,
no?
finally, nakita na tayo dito on Spilling Tea. Jonah is the local lead of She Decides, which is a youth organization led by youth for the youth. So tama-tama, Jonah, na ikaw ang co-host natin ngayon para we can really get behind the issue of teen pregnancy.
Yeah, thank you, Anna, no? Kasi teen pregnancy is one of the key focus of She Decides here in the Philippines, no? Which is actually also led by young people, as you said. And it's one of our key focus, and it's on campaigning and lobbying and addressing teen pregnancy. And personally, this is a very, very close to my heart, no? Hashtag share ko lang, SKL. My grandmother is actually a teen mother, no? She had her first child when she was 14. And that auntie, that first child of my grandmother, also got pregnant when she was 17. Kaya kung titingnan mo yung family tree namin, a lot of my relatives are teen mothers. Kaya naman, this is really very important to me. And especially right now, no, that's lockdown and COVID pandemic, especially for very young adolescents, no, ages 10 to 14. We know that they should be in schools, but there's an added responsibility, no, of having a child, and hindi natin alam if they are actually going to their online classes. Kaya naman, no, Anna, I know that you've written about this for years or even decades, if I may.
Mami, share ko lang din.
you know the stories very well. Kaya how do we, who are our guests for today, and ano ba yung scope of our discussion?
And Jonah, tama ka nga na, I've been writing about teen pregnancy for the last couple of years now. And, our panelists here today will be able to talk about the small gains already that we've made over the last couple of years. Lalo na nung naisulong yung reproductive health law. Kaya lang ngayong pandemya, mukhang yung small gains na yun ay nanganganib. Pero Jonah, introduce na natin yung mga guests natin so we can get into this discussion even more.
So yun nga, Anna, kaya naman this Spilling the Tea series, no, we want to highlight narratives or real stories and real faces, especially in this discussion on teen pregnancy. Kaya naman, I'll introduce a few of the guests. So first one is a young mom, Precious Lazos.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very happy to share my experience with you guys, and I hope na makakuha kayo ng konting lesson from what I experienced.
Thank you, Precious, for joining us. And also, I'd like to introduce Cha Roque, who is a mother, filmmaker, and LGBT advocate. Cha, meron ka din daw SKL hashtag mamaya.
Yes, meron. Maraming SKL later.
Maraming share ko lang. Ang saya. Yeah. Magiging masaya tong storytelling natin ngayong araw na to. And also from the reproductive health advocates and expert side, meron din tayo mga panelists na in-invite, di ba, Jonah?
Totoo yan, Anna, no? So one of the leading youth advocates and youth representative of Family Planning Organization of the Philippines, no? In Iloilo, it's Aloria Paragon. Hello, girl.
Hello, good day everyone. Thank you so much for having me. Maraming salamat. And I'm very excited to share the stories here in Iloilo City. Magandang umaga.
Tama-tama kasi nga nationwide itong problema natin ng teen pregnancy, right? So kung meron tayong tiga Iloilo, meron naman tayong tiga Palawan. I'd like to call on or introduce our friend Ami Evangelista, who is the Executive Director of Roots of Health.
Good morning, everyone.
Very happy to join this. And like you said, nationwide nga tong problema. And actually sa mga probinsya, minsan mas malaking problema pa sa mga rural areas. So very happy to share our experiences and to join you all on this panel today. Thanks. And syempre, lagi tayong, Jonah, this is a spectrum or we like to be inclusive.
Yes.
So we also have with us Eric Bernardo, who is the Adolescent Reproductive Health Program Coordinator for Likhaan. Eric, bumalik tayo sa Maynila dito sa perspective na to. Although, Likhaan covers so many grassroots communities.
Hi, Ana and Jonah. Thank you so much for having me. So, tama ka nga, no? Madalas kasi akala natin pag sinabi nating teen pregnancy, usapin lang ng kababaihan. So, may mga SKL, may mga hashtag SKL din ako batay sa mga nakakausap nating kalalakihan. So, thanks for having me.
Salamat, Eric. Mamaya babalikan natin yung SKL mo. Parang lahat tayo meron ditong ambag na share ko lang hashtag. Pero unang-una yata dun sa mag-SKL, share ko lang. Tama ba si Precious ang una natin pakikinggan? Jonah?
Yes, yes, Ana, no? Again, Precious is a young mom and sobrang happy siya to share her story, which is, I think, mas better kung siya yung mag-share nun. So, hi, Precious.
Hi everyone. Again, thank you for having me today. Sobrang honored ako to be one of your guests for today's topic na yun nga, issue ng lahat. So for my experience, share ko lang, no? When I found out that I was pregnant, as I was actually 20 years old that time and working na ako noon. So I decided to stop to study muna after my first year of college. Then I get to work. And then, ayun, while working, I have a boyfriend. He's working as well. Tapos, ayun, we are actually living together at that time. And ayun, when I got pregnant, of course, ang unang nakaalam nun is, ang una namin pinagsabihin actually is yung mother ng boyfriend ko. Kasi pag weekend, umuwi kami sa kanila. So, ayun, sinamahan nila ako magpa-check up and then ganyan. And afterwards, nalaman din ng mother ko kasi siya yung kasama namin dito sa bahay. And ayun, syempre at first, na-shock sila and nagulat because my mom actually is wants me to focus on my work muna kasi she was advising me na after ko mag-work, mag-study ako ulit. So, ayun, na-shock sila nung nalaman na buntis ako. But, afterwards, ayun, natanggap naman nila. And, kasi, syempre, andun na and they don't want na may makasama sa akin or sa baby. So, ayun, my pregnancy journey is, I could say, okay. Kasi, kumbaga, hindi naman ako maganong sakitin. I was healthy, the baby was healthy, and I'm getting all the support na kailangan ko from my family and my friends. Actually, my closest friends, nung una, hindi ko sinabi sa kanila because I don't know, na siguro parang ano na rin yun natin eh. Parang natatakot tayo kung anong sasabihin nila. So, ako, yun yung inisip ko. But, nung nalaman nila, after kong manganak, they were really happy for me. Kinongratulate nila ako. And parang masarap sa feeling na nakakuha ng support sa family and friends mo, di ba? Na kahit na, ayun, medyo bata pa ako nung nagkaanak, I was not discriminated by some. And ngayon, yung baby ko is actually turning 9 months. And so far, masaya naman kami, okay naman kami. And I'm just happy na I'm one of those, lucky people na nakakuha talaga ng support during nung nagbubuntis sila. Especially yung mga teenage. Kasi hindi lahat ng, lalo na yung mas bata pa sa akin, na nakakuha sila ng support. And then, ayun nga, na-discriminate sila ng society or ng community nila. So, ayun, I'm very, very happy to be, although hindi naman siya dapat na lucky kasi nga, dapat talaga na sinusuportahan yung mga teenage people. But, ayun, thank you na rin kasi na-bless ako ng sobra-sobra. So,
Precious,
ayun.
matanong kita. Ang ganda-ganda nung shinare mo. At tanong ako, gusto ko malaman sa side mo, ano yung na-feel mo when you found out that you were going to be a mother at, sabi mo nga, at quite a young age, at 20. Although nagtatrabaho ka na and all that, medyo bata pa. How did you feel?
Opo. Honestly po, I always wanted a baby po. Kumbaga, ako po sa sarili ko, gusto ko rin po talagang magka-baby. Kasi kahit nung young pa ako, is mahilig po ako sa bata. Ako rin po yung nag-alaga sa brother ko. And then, yung sister ko, nung siya na po yung nag-work, naiwan sa amin yung nephew ko. So, na-enjoy ko po mag-alaga ng bata. So, nung nalaman ko po na nabuntis ako, I was actually happy. And wala namang, ayun nga, even though nga po na 20, sabi ko, it's still, this is what I want talaga. Na if ever na mabuntis ako, I will be very happy to be a mom.
I think mahalaga nga rin na very supportive din yung system at pamilya ni Precious, no, Jonah? Daming sa pagiging happy din niya at, bukas ang loob niya to become a teen mom or a young mom at the time.
Napakahalaga talaga na your ecosystem is very supportive and very caring, no? Kasi napakahirap mag-alaga ng bata. It takes a village, no, to raise a child, sabi nga nila. Kaya I was really also happy for Precious kasi we know each other years ago. And I was very happy na she has this very great support system.
Thank you, Precious, sa pag-SKL mo, hashtag. Mali pala ako, si tita talaga. Dapat pala, hashtag SKL. Hindi pala huli. May isa pa tayo mag-share ko lang na story. Ito naman si Cha. Cha, you also have a teen mom story to share.
Yes, ayan. So, ako naman, I got pregnant when I was 17 and I gave birth when I was 18. So, nagdo-dorm ako nito so I was in college, second year. Tapos yun, nagdo-dorm ako sa Manila. I live in Bulacan kasi. So yun, siguro, of course, merong shock factor sa family kasi I think that during that time, we were actually planning for my debut. Tapos, tapos yun. And parang same with, Precious na, they know me na masipag ako mag-aral, ganyan. So, medyo, parang siguro nagulat sila. I mean, of course, because of that, I would have to stop for a while habang nagbubuntis ako. So, ayun, it wasn't hard for me. So, my family was very accepting about it and very supportive. Siguro, may tinge of regret because when I was pregnant, syempre nakikita ko yung friends ko or nababalitaan ko sa friends ko nung college na ito na yung ginagawa nila. So, I was taking up communication arts. Tapos, parang habang pregnant ako, nagkakwento yung friends ko na nag-film production na sila, tsaka nag-video pro, ganyan, TV production. Yun yung mga major subjects that I was looking forward to. So, medyo ako parang, parang, hindi naman siya inggit, pero parang, oh my gosh, dapat I was supposed to be with you there, ganyan. Pero anyway,
FOMO ba siya? FOMO? May FOMO factor?
Medyo may FOMO. I mean, especially being that age, 'di ba, 17. Tapos, ayun, so I got back to school after mga 2 years because I breastfed exclusively for 3 years. So, ayun, when I got back to school, wala namang stigma against me. Actually, it's surprising because I went to a Catholic school in college. Tapos hindi naman din, I mean, the teachers knew, pero hindi naman ako nagkaroon ng remarks or whatever na you had premarital sex or you got pregnant out of wedlock. Walang ganon. And even my classmates were very open-minded about it. Hindi siya parang naging topic ako ng chismis or something. Ganun. Parang, wala lang, matter of fact, okay, may kid ka, okay, parang ganun lang siya. And, ayun, ang bilis ng panahon, so my kid is now 16 years old. Ayan. So, parang kami magbarkada. Ayun.
Ang saya. Meron ka bang, tsaka matanong kita, ako, and I'm also interested doon, medyo parang may difference in time frame, yung nung naging teen mom or young mom tong si Precious, and then si Cha. Meron bang differences and similarities dito sa experiences nyo in terms of, being able to access the proper information about birth control or being able to access even yung services for a young mother?
I think for the birth control and services for the young mother, I think I asked my OB-GYN directly. Kasi hindi niya sinasabi. I mean, parang, I thought that that's one of the things that she would explain to me after giving birth. Pero hindi. Pero yun, when I asked her naman, she answered my questions. So I think meron pa rin thinking kasi na even if you went through a pregnancy, you're still a minor, so they don't really give you that if you don't ask for it. Parang kasi baka parang may dating na baka kinukonsinti ka nila or baka it would only promote parang or baka ma-encourage ka to do it again, parang ganun. So parang medyo taboo pa rin siya. Our family didn't focus on that, and parang mas okay focus sa baby. Parang hindi nila naisip yung possibility of getting pregnant again. I think it's also parang medyo Pinoy culture yun na parang pag may nabuntis ng maaga, hindi nila yun agad iniisip kasi they think na okay na she learned her lesson, hindi na nila yan uulitin or something. So yun.
Ikaw ba, Precious, no? I think before your pregnancy or after, gumamit ka ba ng any contraceptives or does someone told you about it or any information about it?
After kong manganak, after 2 months, I was scheduled for a checkup. After 2 months of giving birth. And, ayun na, pinresent naman siya agad sa akin ng OB ko. And even while I'm still pregnant, pinag-uusapan naman namin siya na she would prescribe me birth control pills after giving birth para, in case. But before I got pregnant, hindi kami gumagamit ng wala kaming ginagamit kumbaga ng contraceptive pills. Though actually dito sa barangay namin meron, I think they provide pag nanghingi, ayun.
Ayun, Ana, no? We saw that nung si Cha, we saw na yung mismong OB-GYN yung parang nahihiya pa magbigay ng information. But I think at least, no, as we saw generationally na kahit pa paano our OB-GYNs and our HSPs or health service providers are very open to tackling this even to young mothers.
Oo, go ahead, sorry.
I think it also has to do with the age or the personal views of your OB-GYN. Kasi yung sa akin, matanda na siya. As in, siya rin yung nagpaanak sa nanay ko. Me. So, alam mo yun, parang I don't think it's parang baka it's not aligned with her values or something. Pero I'm seeing more progressive OB-GYNs na hindi judgmental. I mean, my OB was not judgmental, pero yun nga, baka because of her age, hindi siya yung tipong magpo-promote na, okay, kakapanganak mo lang, gumamit ka nito or something. So, ayun.
Maganda rin sa story ni Precious tsaka ni Cha. Very supportive kahit pa paano yung environment nila, yung close family circle of friends, yung ganyan. Pero meron din pagkukulang talaga sa information, I think, in terms of, birth control and all that. But very important yung supportive ecosystem. Hindi lahat ng teen moms, Jonah, di ba ganyan ang support system?
Totoo yan, Ana, no? Kasi we know that, especially in urban, poor and rural communities, so that young moms and teen mothers, minsan sila pa yung nasisisi why they experience this or they experience that, no? And I think it's really time that we move forward to another story, no? Especially in Palawan. And I think Ate Ami from Roots of Health can share to us ano ba yung mga factors that impacts teen pregnancy in rural areas, or maybe a narrative, no, of what's currently happening as well.
Sure, thanks. This is such an interesting conversation, and there are a lot of factors that affect the whole, girls in the whole country, but there are some specific issues that people who are in more rural areas face more, usually kasi of a lack of access to services. But basically, we're seeing that a lot of young people, wala talaga silang alam about contraception, even about the basic biology ng pregnancy. How does pregnancy happen? Kasi kung natuturuan man sila sa school, it's usually just the science behind it. Yung parang ito si egg cell, ito si sperm cell, ganito gumawa. So hindi nila pinag-uusapan yung the context around it, including relationships and, when in a relationship do you start having sex and how do you have safer sex and things like that. So one issue is the lack of information, and then the other is lack of access to services. Kasi yun nga, kadalasan, yung mga OB, like na-mention ni Cha, they can be older. Even the nurses and midwives who are the staff of barangay health centers, madalas medyo, yung mga position na yun kasi there's a lot of job security. So minsan 30 years na sila sa position nila. So they tend to be older, and minsan that makes them more judgmental. And so minsan, one of the problems is that most of the time young people, hindi sila lumalapit. Pero minsan kahit lumapit man sila, talagang ginajudge sila. Minsan papagalitan pa sila. Minsan sinasabi pa, uy, susumbong kita sa nanay mo, malis ka dito. So it can be very difficult for young people to access services. So that's one of the things na tinututukan namin dito. We've done like youth-friendly clinic assessments of barangay health centers, and we do trainings for nurses and midwives for how to be better in providing adolescent sexual and reproductive health care. Kasi basically ang sinasabi namin is kung hindi mo sila bigyan ng services ngayon, pagbalik nila, buntis na sila. So right now, hinihingi nila contraception. Pag hindi mo bigyan ng services, next time, prenatal na. And pag sinasabi namin ng ganun, most of them naman are like, oh, ayaw naming mangyari yun. So, they become more open. But it's really hard to change attitudes. Kasi syempre, sarili nila, they feel that young people shouldn't be sexually active. So parang, ang sinasabi namin sa kanila, hindi nyo kailangan ibahin yung paniniwala ninyo. Pero as a health provider, meron kayong, you are required to provide services even if they're doing something na hindi ka in approval of. Kahit hindi ka nag-approve sa ginagawa nila, you have a duty to help them protect their health. And, it was nice to hear from both Precious and Cha na yung mga teachers nila and schools were supportive. Kasi dito sa Puerto, marami kaming examples na hindi ganun. And, there are a lot of cases kasi the law actually says na kahit buntis ang estudyante, pwede pa rin pumasok. Pero there's a lot of schools that really put a lot of shame and pressure on girls to stay home na lang kasi takot sila na lalo na kung popular yung mga girls na na parang baka mahawa daw yung ibang mga classmate kung nakikita nila na may buntis na pumapasok pa rin. So parang mas gusto nila na sa bahay na lang yung mga girls na yon doing the modular lessons. But I mean, this is another problem with COVID, right? But at the time when we were discussing this, yung modular sessions, really disadvantageous para sa girls kasi mas madali pa rin to follow your studies kung nandun ka sa classroom versus kung binibigay lang sa'yo yung modular stuff. So, it's really very heartening to hear that may mga supportive teachers kasi meron pa kaming nakausap na principal na ang bait-bait niya. She was so welcoming to us. Like, we're teaching comprehensive sex ed. Like, ang supportive niya. Tapos, may kasama kaming funder namin from Germany na kinakausap siya. So, sabi niya, oh, you're the principal here. Do you ever have
pregnant students. Tapos sabi ni principal, oh yes, and we bully them. Tapos talagang nakangiti pa siya.
What?
And our funder, yung funder namin, tinignan lang ako. Tapos pagbalik namin sa sasakyan, sabi ng funder, okay, we'll continue to fund your programs in these schools. Kasi parang, nakita niya na even the most well-meaning people na, they're not monsters. Hindi sila masasamang tao.
Yeah.
But they have these deeply rooted beliefs that allows them to judge girls when this happens. So it's really, really unfortunate. But this is the reality that a lot of girls, especially those who are under 18, and especially even the younger adolescents, the 10 to 14s, they really face a lot of this.
Very punitive pa rin talaga ang tingin natin sa handling of teen pregnancy, no? Yung if it's not on the side of, okay, let's keep this a secret or let's not let the other girls know about this, parang as if infectious siya. Pero meron din side na it's very punishing, whether subtly or keeping you out of school by suggesting or pushing you to do the modular studies, which is the alternative learning system of DepEd, right, Ami, if I remember right, to really making it an unwelcome environment for you to continue going to school.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard. Young people really face a lot of barriers to accessing services. And again, I was, reminded when Cha was talking about her OB that it's like we fail them already the first time that they get pregnant. And then when they're still not provided contraception after giving birth or information about it even, that's the second failure na eh. And this is why not only does the Philippines have so many teen pregnancies, but we have one of the highest rates of repeat teen pregnancies. So girls who before they're 19, have their second already. So it's really a big problem.
Before we leave Palawan, I want to ask you, Ami, I know that, this is, we live in an archipelago, so it makes it also geographically difficult to get services to the young women who need it. Would you have some
really
experiences to share about how difficult it is to get these services across in those very remote areas?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges. Lalo na you mentioned we're an archipelago. There are so many island municipalities all over our country. And kahit hindi island municipalities, there are, mountainous places, areas that are just, inaccessible. Certain months of the year lang pwedeng pumunta dahil matataas yung alon or because of the weather. So there are really a lot of issues. And, one of the most striking stories that my team encountered is a few years ago, we traveled to Balabac, which is the southernmost point of Palawan province. So it's actually much closer to Malaysia already than it is like to mainland Palawan and to mainland Philippines. And we went there with the Philippine Navy because they were having a mission for the Molbog group there, which is an indigenous Muslim Palawenyo group, IP group. And at the time, we had been certified in providing implants, which is a small rod, plastic rod that is inserted in the arm of a woman or a girl, and then it prevents pregnancy for 3 years. So it's great for places like this na mahirap talaga puntahan because, you basically put it in and you don't have to think about it for 3 years. So you don't need to continually access care. But if you do want to get pregnant, pwede naman ipatanggal. Although for the rural areas, it might be a little bit harder to find someone. But now DOH has trained more people to do it. But at the time, we explained to the girls and women who were gathered kung paano siya gumagana, like how does it work, what are the side effects, ganon. And then afterwards, we said, okay, yung mga may gustong kumuha nito, pila na po tayo dito and we'll continue. So the first girl who came up was, tawagin natin siyang Jessica. She had her 3-year-old child with her, holding her hand. Tapos she was carrying her 4-month-old. And she said that basically she had her 2 kids. She did not want to have another pregnancy. So she wanted an implant. So, our midwife was processing her and she asked, meron bang ginagamit ngayon na contraceptive because she was sexually active? And Jessica said, no, wala silang ginagamit. So our midwife said, okay, well, standard operating procedure, kailangan natin bigyan ka ng pregnancy test kasi para siguraduhin lang na hindi ka buntis bago ka bigyan ng implant. So she took a pregnancy test, but unfortunately, it was positive. So kami pa yung nagsabi sa kanya. She thought she was gonna go to get something to help her avoid a pregnancy. But kami pa yung nagsabi sa kanya that, unfortunately, you're pregnant. We can give you prenatal vitamins. And then when you give birth, we can give you this, but we can't give you this now. And so she was really disappointed, 17 years old and facing her third pregnancy. And after her, the next woman in line, tawagin natin siyang Elena. Si Elena naman became the first woman that we did provide an implant to. And she was 30 years old and she had 11 kids. And to me, that's just I often think of Jessica because parang yun na yung trajectory niya eh. If to be 30 years old and have 11 kids, then by the time you're 17, 18, 19, 20, you're already going to be at 3, 4, 5 kids, right? So it's really sad because we saw with Jessica, she did not want to have so many of those kids. And the wonderful thing about Philippine culture is that we are so loving and we are accepting, and when we do interviews, pag tinatanong namin yung mga babae, like, how many children did you want? Lagi nilang sasabihin yung number na meron sila, right? Like most people will not say that they regret having a child. And that is a wonderful thing. But if you interview people and earlier on, tanungin mo sila, ilan ba yung ideal number of children mo? And then later on in the interview, much later, you ask them kung ilan talaga yung anak nila. That's where you're gonna see a difference. And on average in the Philippines, Filipino women have 1 to 2 children more than they think is the ideal number. So, that's just something that we should be thinking about because it's great that we are a loving society, but it would also be great if all pregnancies were wanted and planned.
Totoo yan, Ate Amin, no? Kasi na-experience ko yan when I research in Batanes, no, that repeat pregnancies are now very common. Akala natin it's just stories out there, but it's really continually being common. And yung nakilala ko is first time pregnancy niya is 17 and then dahil live-in sila and at 19 nabuntis siya ulit. But there's still the myth sa implants na even for them takot pa rin sila to get an implant because of a lot of sabi ni ganito hindi na daw ako magkakaroon ng menstruation after, no. So yung mga ganong myths, it's still surrounding, and ito yung mga minsan kinakatakutan nila on why they don't want to get an implant or at least we need to encourage them or we need that information as well. And yun nga yung story ni Jessica and ni Elena, it's we need to stop at least hindi na dapat magkaroon pa ng another Jessica or another Elena in a lot of other areas, no. Kaya naman I wanted to jump in to Loria na what's the importance of youth volunteers na kasing edaran nitong like Jessica and like other youth young mothers, no. What's the importance of having youth volunteers na naintindihan sila and hindi sila nahihiya kasi nabanggit nga natin kanina na yung mas older OB-GYNs or older health service providers, takot tayong or nahihiya tayong lumapit, no. So at least someone who they talk to directly who's on the same age. So how was it your experience, no? Especially ngayong COVID na 21 and below, they can't go to hindi sila makalabas ng bahay.
Thank you so much, Rona, for that. No? Maraming salamat. Actually, here in Iloilo City, yung teenage pregnancy issues is very close to my heart also. Kasi naging part din siya kung bakit naging part ako, naging rason siya kung bakit naging part ako sa organization na ito. And Jonah, actually, during this pandemic, merong mga few adolescents na nagko-contact sa amin na saying na kailangan nila ng pregnancy test, kailangan nila na ma-assess. So pinupuntahan namin sila. And one time, mayroon nag-message sa amin na concerned neighbor lang, nagsabi na yung bata daw na 17 years old hindi lumalabas for a very long time. So pinuntahan namin siya. Then according sa assessment namin, she's scared na baka daw buntis na siya kasi daw 3 months na hindi siya nadatnan. Pero according naman sa nurse namin, nung binigyan siya ng pregnancy test, turned out na positive siya. Tapos nagalak din siya kasi merong mga kaedad niya, katulad ko and katulad ng isang volunteer, na wherein open siya na mag-discuss ng opinions niya. Then according sa conversation namin, sabi niya, hindi niya alam na yung ginawa nila pala is sex na. Tapos hindi niya alam na that it could lead to pregnancy pala. Tapos tinanong siya namin kung yung boyfriend niya ba ilang taon na. According to her, 15 years old lang yung lalaki. So yung social worker namin and the youth volunteers pumunta sa bahay ng lalaki. Tapos according naman sa lalaki, hindi niya alam na yung ginawa niya kasi sabi niya kiss lang naman. Tapos sinabi niya, nagpapasalamat nga ako na may COVID kasi daw may nagawa sila na as partners. Tapos sabi niya, nagpapasalamat siya na may COVID kasi yung pagpepedicab niya could help them na mag-start ng family kasi tumaas na yung pamasahe sa pedicab. So yun yung statement na very simple na statement, pero pag hinukay mo, pag kinausap mo silang dalawa, hindi nila ginusto yung mga nangyayari. So this time, Jonah, this pandemic, yung services na ibibigay sa mga kabataan na hindi na nila kailangan ma-expose pa sa labas is very important. Tapos yung mga stories na hindi natin nakikita. Nagpapasalamat lang din tayo kasi yung mga nakausap natin tulad ni Miss Precious, ni Miss Cha, supportive yung surroundings nila, yung environment. Pero dito sa Iloilo, common kasi na ayaw nila sabihin na buntis sila, common na tinatago yung pagbubuntis nila kasi nga they're scared na ma-discriminate kahit ng mismong pamilya nila. So very important na maging visible yung services na pwede nilang na-access. Tapos malaking tulong din na makikita nila na they're confident na mag-share sa kaedad nila kasi compared sa mga adults po.
Laura, I'm hearing a lot of parang themes in your story. Yung unang-una na lang, very young people aren't very aware of what actually constitutes sex. And I'm keeping this a safe space in this panel. When you think about the first time that you had sex, did you know that it was sex already? I remember not knowing was that it? Was that it? Right? The very first time that I had sex, parang, yun na ba yun? You don't even know. Right? But that can already get you pregnant. I mean, let's keep it real here. I know I didn't know. and secondly, yung theme of you feel the need to connect to someone. I think that's all very normal. Even at any age, you'll feel a need to connect to someone, this intimacy for some kind of security. And I can imagine that in a time like pandemic where everything that we know to be normal life has been thrown into uncertainty, mas lumalakas yata yung instinct also to be with someone and for comfort and for some kind of touch, no? Yung ganong feeling. That's very normal also. Pero yung isa pa, yung naisip ko nung nagkukwento si Laura, is the idea na this young couple was very young and then they didn't know about it, tapos pareho silang sinasabi na merong problems within the family. Now we know that there are a lot of families that have parents abroad, and this is not in any way to put pressure on them or to add any kind of guilt or stigma to that choice to work abroad. But I think it highlights the importance of hindi lang naman parents yung pwedeng maging guardians or mentors or persons who can guide you and give you information about birth control, about consent, and also about planning when you can get pregnant. Eric, isa ka doon sa pwedeng maging mentor, guardian outside of parents, right? To provide tamang information about birth control and contraceptive.
Yeah. So, tama ka nga, napakadaming themes na makukuha natin doon sa sharing, doon sa hashtag SKN ni Gloria. And for my case, kasi sabi ko nga, di ba, I'll try to share male perspective. In as much as I want to share about teen pregnancy, I don't have my own family yet. Hindi naman din ako magbubuntis. So there was a time na we're conducting an outreach activity in an urban poor community in Quezon City. And there was this couple, one 17-year-old girl and a 19 or 21-year-old boy queuing up for implant. So so we tested them, we did the usual protocol, and fortunately, pwede namang magpa-implant yung partner niya. And kinausap ako nung partner niya at sabi sa akin, Kuya Eric, bakit ngayon ka lang dumating? Nakatatlo na tuloy ako. So parang I was like, kasalanan ko pa ba? Parang kasalanan ko pa na hindi namin kayo kagad naabot. Pero yun nga, kaya na sabi ni Ami, kung hindi natin sila maabot, sino yung aabot sa kanila? So it's good that we have this kind of services na pwede nating ibigay talaga sa kanila. Kasi dito natin makikita how much they earn the services. Kanina nabanggit niya siya na older health providers may be conservative, they have values opposing what's currently being done by young people. Pero this is a reality. If we won't give them the type of services that we have, sabi nga ni Ami kanina, we have already failed them kasi nung nakita natin sila, pregnant na sila. And all the more na kung i-deny natin yung mga services na ito when they need it the most. Kasi sila na yung lalapit eh. Unfortunately, I'm speaking as a registered nurse now. Parang we have this notion kasi na adolescents are generally healthy population. Na hindi yan kagaya ng mga younger kids or mga senior adults na kapag may mga concerns na may konti lang maramdaman lalapit. Pero for adolescents, may notion tayo na hindi, generally healthy itong age group na to, they're on their prime. So, ayun. And kaya kapag lumapit sila sa atin, siguro it's best that we can provide them with options. It's best that we set aside our own personal biases. We may be conscientious objectors, but if we're in the field of reproductive health, dapat magbibigay talaga tayo ng mga services na to.
Kaya grateful talaga a lot of adolescents and young people for Roots of Health, for Likhaan, for FPOP, no? Good thing na tatlong of the best NGOs on reproductive health ay kasama natin ngayon, Ana, no? Being sensitive enough, knowing what the adolescent needs, no? It's really helpful for having someone who is not only a service provider but a friend, no? Ito yung napakahalaga for adolescents and young people talaga.
Totoo naman, kasi sino ba ang tatanungin mo? Yung kaibigan mo rin na wala rin alam. I still hear stories na, nabuntis ako, pero hindi ko alam kung bakit kasi tumalo naman ako after kami nag-sex. Minsan natatanong ko, pang ilang palapag? Baka mamaya 1 lang. Baka hindi mo ginawang 2 steps? Ganun na lang minsan yung biruan. Pero yung nakakalungkot na, this information gap or yung misconceptions na sanang pwedeng ma-address by just having an open line of communication to people that you can trust to give you proper information but give you enough space to make an informed decision can already empower our young people to make proper choices for themselves.
Totoo yan, Ana, no? But I think siguro may question dito yung isa sa ating mga viewers because we see in this panel, no, that NGOs are at the forefront and even co-adolescents and co-young people. Pero what do you think daw po yung ways na government can support daw teenage moms? Example daw ay social security net. So I think any of our guests, no, can answer because we don't have a government person right now. But I think because of our partnerships with the governments, maybe we can share some examples that you've experienced.
So, for the government naman, we can say na wala silang ginagawa. Kasi kahit pa paano naman, meron. Pero what we're saying is kulang kulang ang ginagawa ng government. I'm pwedeng sabihin na I'm saying this because I don't work in the government, but being partner with the government, ito yung paulit-ulit naming sinasabi sa kanila. Well, we appreciate what you're doing. We want more. This young people needs more. So for teen moms, particularly for pregnant mothers, first-time pregnant women, young girls, may tinatawag po tayong Women About to Give Birth na program ng PhilHealth, wherein kahit na minor sila, when they would go for prenatal checkups, they would be automatically enrolled for PhilHealth para at least magagamit nila yung PhilHealth benefits, and also they can use it para sa magiging anak nila. But this one is only one-time use. So if in case na magkakaroon sila ng repeat pregnancies, which is very common ngayon, sabi nga namin, kung hindi man natin mapigilan ang first-time pregnancy, sana we can do something to prevent repeat pregnancies. So, ayun, ang kailangan lang, itutuloy yung pagbabayad ng premiums after the first pregnancy. Pero alam naman natin, hindi lahat ay nakakapagbayad ng premiums.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, I mean, I was gonna add that I think hindi ko pa nakikita to, but I think it would be great if the government, the DOH especially, focused on partnerships with DepEd to get girls back in school. Because that's one of the biggest hardships that girls face with teen pregnancies is usually that means the end of their schooling na. Most of the time, hindi na sila makakabalik. And the girls who are able to go back to school, ang common theme na nag-allow nun is supportive family. So, you know, the lolo or the lola or a sister or somebody who is helping to take care of the child. But if they don't have that, wala na. Like, they're really not going to be able to go back. So I think it would be great if the government focused on support systems to get them back in school, whether that means it's a daycare or, you know, finding some way na, you know, shorten class or something, but to be creative and try to find ways to get them back in school. And, you know, my biggest frustration with the government, and, you know, we do work closely with POPCOM and DOH, and, you know, these are also very passionate people who are trying to serve the people who need their support. But so often the interventions and programs, nakafocus sila on how to prevent the second pregnancy. And I'm always the one in the room saying, can we please prevent the first one? You know, because nobody wants to deal with the fact that young people are having sex. You know, and I just feel like if we just accept that and stop with this narrative na, oh, we're a conservative culture. Like, no, actually, if you look at the data, we're really not. We say we're conservative, but what people do is not. So let's accept that and deal with our situation and move forward. Ang problema kasi, if we keep pretending that it's not an issue, hindi natututukan. And, you know, part of my frustration is, you know, for me right now, kahit anong sex ed, I'll be so happy na kung merong isama ang DepEd sa school, because right now there's really none. But so even just the basics, I think, would be helpful. But ideally, they should also talk about sex, about sexuality, about the fact that it, you know, like Loria was getting to this, it feels good. It can make, you know, if you're in a good relationship, it can add to the intimacy. Like, there are many reasons why people have sex. It's fun, right? And with the way that we talk to young people now, we make it seem as if like it's so bad, hindi to para sa bata, bawal. Now, of course, I'm not saying that it should be for children, but I'm saying if that's what you tell kids, and then they go and have sex and see that it feels good, that it's fun, whatever, then they're just not going to believe anything you say anymore. Because all they're going to remember is, oh, sabi nila, wag to gawin, but look, it's so fun. You know, so I feel like realistically, they're having sex or going to have sex. Let's teach them how to do it safely so that they're not going to have an unplanned pregnancy or get HIV or other STIs.
I remember Ami and I, we sometimes see each other in all sorts of conferences where they have youth panels, and young people will talk about how they wished these issues were, you know, discussed with them. And lagi ko natatandaan yung sinabi ng isang youth advocate, you, older person, Want to tell me not to have sex? What were you doing when you were younger? So I mean, it's also that
Very
no,
true. Yeah.
we need to remember who we were. We were also teenagers at some point in time. Thank you, Ami, for sharing that. And also, Eric, yung sagot dun sa tanong na what do you think the government can do? Pero ibabato ko muna to kay Chat tsaka kay Precious because yes, need to look to government for what they can do to support teen moms. Pero what about the circle of family and friends? What can they do to support teen moms? What was most helpful to you? Because you also had you both had supportive friends and family during your pregnancies.
Maganda yung minention ni Ami because care work is really a lot, and especially if you want to go back and continue with your studies. Mahirap kung wala kang katulong mag-alaga or wala kang mapag-iiwanan ng bata, ganyan. Actually, ako parang na-delay ako ng mas matagal than most women getting pregnant now, yung ay nakikita ko. Kasi parang during my time, hindi pa masyadong uso yung pag-store ng breast milk. So I had to be physically there. Parang konti pa lang yung resources for that. Pero ngayon, ang dami na ring resources. So it's a good thing. In terms of family, yun, care work talaga, tsaka support. I mean, I hear students of women na mismo yung families nila yung hindi na sila pinapabalik sa school or hindi na pinapatapos yung studies nila, ganyan. So, malaking factor talaga. Especially kung ilang taon ka pa lang, tapos you have to deal with getting, parang moving on with your life and your studies. Tapos kung walang support na ganun from your parents. Ayan. I think I also want to mention na parenting effort, siguro as someone na from a younger generation, may effort from my part to try and stop that circle na of treating reproductive health talks at home at taboo. So, yung daughter ko, very open ako makipag-usap sa kanya about it. Of course, it's age appropriate. Pero, as in from a young age, she was encouraged to ask questions and she knows that she won't be judged for that. So, ganon.
How
Ikaw
about
naman,
you?
Precious?
So ako naman, again, yun nga, since I have support from my family, both sides actually, kahit dun sa sa side ng partner ko, they were supportive naman. So sabi nila if I was planning to go back to school kapag malaki na yung if I can, kasi actually exclusive breastfeed din yung baby ko. So siguro after 2 years I could go back to studying. Marami namang mag-aalaga and they're willing to watch over my baby. And doon naman sa side ng ayun nga, sa mga friends, kasi actually, since high school, marami akong schoolmates and even classmates na they were pregnant when they were studying. Kumbaga, talagang nagpursue sila na matapos yung high school kahit nabuntis sila. And I think it's a good thing to, parang hindi maging, kumbaga, hindi naging balakid o hadlang yung pagbubuntis nila para hindi sila makapag-aral. And that's good kasi yung parang opportunity yun eh. Kasi mostly kapag yun nga nabuntis ng maaga yung mga babae, ang iniisip agad ng mga tao, hindi na yan makakapag-aral. Kumbaga na lang yan, mag-aalaga na lang ng anak, ganyan. Ganyan na lang siya hanggang lumaki yung anak niya. So I think to see them and also on my part na to be given a chance to mag-aral ulit kahit na nagka-anak na, it's a very big thing and a blessing na rin. Siguro kasi nga may mga tao, may mga babae na hindi na nakakuha ng ganong opportunity, and hindi nakakuha rin ng support mula sa family and friends nila kasi nadi-discriminate na nga sila ng society. So, ayun.
Cha, you were
Ayun.
nodding your head a lot when you were listening to Precious's answer. Feeling ko gusto mo mag hashtag SKL dun sa tanong na yon about how we can better support teen moms kung tayo ay friend or classmate.
Yes, I wanted to add dun sa sinabi ni Precious about the schools. Sorry, ang ingay ng dogs ko. Anyway, sige. So, I wanted to add to what Precious shared about the schools. Hindi ko alam ngayon if my previous school has changed their policy. But when I was pregnant, parang you're required to take a leave of absence if it's a pregnancy out of wedlock. So instead of missing just one semester, if they find out, required ka. Tapos parang syempre, that's very dangerous because baka yung iba magpakasal so they can continue their studies, and to not have an image. So sana, hindi ako sure about this if this is still the rule, pero sana may mga ganun ding changes as things progress, di ba? Sana may mga ganong pagbabago sa mga institutions. For friends, ang ganda nung story na shinare din ni Precious about her friends and family. And I think our stories are very similar. Na we have been surrounded by a supported circle of people. So, ayun. Ano ba? Siguro, support in terms of when you need to vent. Kasi, walang during that time when I was pregnant, hindi pa uso yung talks about mental health. Parang, hindi pa masyadong ganon ka, hindi pa ganong nadidiscuss noon yung postpartum depression. So, yung mga ganon, especially when you're young, tapos,
Right.
'di ba? So, grabe yung mga naiisip, yung mga nararamdaman mo. So, sana ganon. I hope families recognize that it doesn't only end, yung support doesn't only end with hanggang manganak. Pero, yun din, yung parang ibang support in terms of emotional and mental health din.
Ayun, Ana, no? Parang narinig ko rin kay Cha and Precious na they feel lucky, pero dapat hindi sila lucky. Dapat ito yung norm
Yes.
of having a supportive family and environment. No?
Pero mas norm sana yung hindi na maging teenage mother. We're not saying that, you shouldn't get pregnant. Hindi to ganitong episode. Pero kasi the way that teen pregnancy, and this is how the years that I've spent writing about this topic, the most tragic for me is how in some communities and in, there's general prevalence, it happened, and dyan na yan eh. When teenage pregnancy is 101% preventable.
That's true.
When, diba?
Yeah, yung title actually nung research ko ay andyan na eh. Kasi yun yung paulit-ulit na sinasabi ng community, kahit saan ka magpunta, kahit saang barangay, andyan na eh, ano pang magagawa. Parang laging parang end of the road na siya. Pero may mga questions pa pala tayo dito, Ana, na maybe, no, hindi dapat maging end of the road yung teenage pregnancy, kaya naman, ano yung bilang kabataan daw, Aloria, no? How can we help dito sa policy interventions addressing teen pregnancy? Kasi eto si Nazareth, no, sabi niya frustrated daw siya and na makatulong, no, at ma-engage lalo on this issue.
Okay, para naman sa akin, Jonah, anyone can do something to prevent teenage pregnancy or to support teen moms. I think sa simple way, like sa pag-share ng mga post and of course, sa pag-share ng mga services na pwede nilang ma-avail can be a great na. And of course, let's try to make the services visible and accessible din. So sa mga iba na feeling nila na wala silang maitulong, actually meron sa paggamit ng Facebook mo, social media accounts mo, you can do something. You can help your peers about it. So I think social media is very powerful, Jonah, especially during this pandemic, no? Kasi halos lahat ng mga kabataan nag-a-access na ng social media kasi nga hindi makakalabas. I think it's important to use social media sa ibang bagay na hindi lang into posting the photos or what. It's important to post something na makakatulong din sa iba. Yes.
Pero maganda rin na nag-assert na rin yung young people na this is an issue we would like to know more about. Dati, siguro si Ami yung ka-contemporary ko. Di ba, Ami? Hindi natin masyadong ina-assert yan during our age na,
Consider nakakahiya kasi you don't want
And-
someone to say, bakit ka nagtatanong?
oo, baka you're having sex. Di ba? Naririnig, every time I think about that, I remember my mother in my head na, shh, bad yan, bad. I get this image of my mom.
When we teach in schools, it's hard din kasi minsan, if a girl has questions, we're explaining about consciousness, tapos meron siyang tanong, minsan yung mga kaklase niya, yun, they'll start to tease her, uy, may balak, bakit nagtatanong, ganon. So, we also, I feel like it's normal, especially for adolescents at that age, for them to think it's funny and to have those interactions. Pero I do think that just repeated giving the information, wag once lang, like just repeated, and exactly what Chaz has done with her daughter na age-appropriate sex ed, na parents talk to their kids as they grow up and answer their questions. It's so important.
Oh, and I just like to bring up here, for the parents who are listening, Ami, Cha, and I are parents, and there's a lot of research that says that the more open you are to your children about sex and informed choice, and when we say sex, it's sex education and, the context of healthy relationships, this relationship with your parent, this open line of communication will actually empower them to think, safely about and responsibly about their decisions when it comes to having intimate relationships. A lot of parents say that they're scared to bring up this topic with their children because they think, my kids might think na, okay, you're giving them the go signal to go have sex. But actually, the research is pretty consistent across the different countries. They need parental guidance. And they need guidance from parents in such a way that it's open, non-judgmental, and very supportive.
Anna, if I could just add that, of course, like we're based in Palawan, and so all of our trainings and things used to be just in Palawan, but now we're migrating all of our information online, and we have Facebook support groups. So we have one for people who want to be youth advocates or peer educators for other young people, and we share like trainings, communication materials, things that they can share. We also have one for parents on how to start talking to their kids about sexuality, how to answer their questions. We also have one for teachers who want to teach about our age or answer, be able to answer their students' questions. So we actually have several other groups, including for people who are trained in HIV screening and all kinds of other things. But especially for the youth advocates, resources for parents, resources for teachers. If anybody is interested, please feel free to just send me an email. It's Ami, AMI, @rootsofhealth.org.
That's great, Ami, because a lot of the sex education information out there is pretty Western. So it's also good to have a local context and, yung appropriate sa kultura natin, mga Pilipino. I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up this discussion.
Yeah, so I think Giselle asked, to anyone who wanted to have a contraceptive implant, how can they access the service? And fee daw po ba to, no? Is this service still available even this pandemic? Ito yung napakaraming nagtatanong din sa amin yan, no? Is this still available? And hirap na hirap nga talaga makakuha yung iba. But I think there are a lot of service providers here that can answer this question. If you're based in Manila, I think Kuya Eric can answer that.
Yeah. So for those in NCR and San Jose del Monte, Bulacan, and Eastern Samar, Likhaan po has 8 clinics where you can avail of contraceptive implants for free. So we still continue to operate despite the pandemic dahil sabi nga po natin, mas kailangan ang mga serbisyong pang reproductive health and family planning at this time, given na may quarantine and lockdown and all. So, visit lang po kayo sa Facebook page ng Likhaan, facebook.com/likhaanph. You can see our list of clinics and the schedule as well. And yun po, Ami, for those in Palawan, maybe.
Yeah, we are providing implants, IUDs, DMPA injections, pills, and condoms, all the services we still have in our 2 clinics for anybody in Puerto Princesa.
Yeah, and Gloria.
So FPUP could do door-to-door SRH services if you're located in actually FPUP is a nationwide NGO naman. So you could visit your RH hotline FB page so you could ask them. Pero yung implant is I think it's free paano ba yung tawag? Sorry, I forgot the term. Yung magpalagay ng implant, it's free. Pero pag magpa-remove, merong payment because yung sa PhilHealth ba, yung included lang is yung pag-ipa-insert. Yeah. So please visit the FB page of FPOP for more details. Thank you.
Wow.
I think if there's anything that we can draw as a positive from this pandemic is that, you know, the government and also the NGOs have really ramped up their social media and online and digital communication platforms. So, you know, you can access the information that you need through the social media sites or the Facebook pages of Roots of Health, of Likaan, and also of FPOP. So at least merong gano'n, no, may mas liberal na access to information. And you can also call for your questions regarding services. Jonah, bago tayo mag-wrap up, gusto kong tanungin ulit yung... Ay, sorry, Eric, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, just to add din pala, for those outside of NCR, Likaan is also offering free online SRH teleconsults. So that's Monday to Friday. May special, may dedicated time slots for doctors and nurses of Likaan to do online teleconsults. Nasa Facebook page din kung paano mag-register. So there.
Eric, paalala ko lang, meron din ang Likaan, di ba, na specific chatbot para sa youth?
Yes. Also, we have, so magpa-plug na ako ng bongga-bongga dito. We also have we also have this online page, Facebook page. It's teens.info.ph. Kilalanin natin si Kai, ang kaibigan nyo na handang magbigay ng libreng impormasyon kaugnay sa anything sexual and reproductive health related. So that's facebook.com/teens.info.ph.
Yun naman pala, no? Very accessible na to teens, especially those who can access online yung mga services na to. And to consult, no? Hindi lang yung huhulaan natin kung ano ba yung right contraceptive for us. There are actually professionals who can help us and wag lang talaga mahiyang magtanong.
Anyway, online naman, Jonah, so pwede naman maging anonymous. Hindi naman yan makikita ng mami mo o ng tita mo. Hindi ba? Pwede PM is the key, di ba? PM is the key. Jonah, bago natin i-wrap up tong session natin on teen pregnancy, ako meron akong tanong sa lahat ng panelists natin. I think all of us talked about the importance of what non-judgmental listening and support is like, or the importance of it. We're not just talking about teen pregnancy, pero even before that, yung magtatanong pa lang about handa na ba akong makipag-sex? Gusto yata ng aking boyfriend or ng girlfriend. Am I ready? Even sa mga tanong na ganon, na bago pa tayo dumating sa teen pregnancy. So, my question to the panelists, what does non-judgmental listening and support look like? So that our listeners can know how to give this kind of support. Cha, unahin kita.
Okay, sige.
Paano ba maging non-judgmental? Sa friends. Kahit dun pa lang sa mga tanong about relationships, di ba? Paano ba maging non-judgmental?
I think, hindi kasi ako sure ko if it applies to all, no? Siguro yung share ko na lang yung sa daughter ko. Ayun, pag nagtatanong siya, hindi ko sinasabi yung words like, hindi mo pa kaya kasi yan dapat ginagawa, naku masama yan, blah, blah, blah. So, I accept her questions and answer them yun nga, in an age-appropriate manner. Pero I think younger parents are capable of doing this. Kasi, syempre, yung iba ay sanay sila dun sa kinalakihan nila. So, yun. Or, paano ba? Pag sa friends, siguro, when they're sharing, you try not to make it about you. Alam mo yun, give them time to speak and really listen. Hindi yung, ako nga ganito ako nga ganyan. Parang, you really listen to what they're trying to say, especially kung ganyan, ganong topic. So,
Parang examples, it's like you have to suspend your own judgment or your own opinion. No, whether it's a friend talking to you or your kid asking you, parang answer the question, but withhold or suspend your own opinion, especially if it runs counter to what's being asked or what is being confided in you. Salamat siya. Jonah, sino ang gusto mong tanungin susunod?
I think gusto kong tanungin si Loria, no? Kasi as someone who's on the same age group as well, no? Paano ba maging non-judgmental to your peers and to your co-advocates as well?
For me naman, non-judgmental for me lang means don't give advices because sometimes it could lead into misconception. At kasi minsan pinupuntahan tayo nila kasi gusto lang nila may kausap. Hindi yung tayo yung sasalita and salita. And of course, don't critic sa mga sinasabi nila. Instead, just listen. Then of course, be open-minded and ready to give options, no? Kung ano yung mga pwedeng maibigay natin na tulong. And I think that's the non-judgmental for me.
At ang dapat na option doon ay mag-access
No.
FPOP sa Roots of Health or sa Likaan.
True.
So you're guided properly also to make informed decisions. Okay, Ami, paano ba maging supportive? You've talked about aspects, right? From friends to healthcare providers and also to parents. Paano ba maging supportive?
So I'll talk on two of those. For healthcare providers, our staff, they yung regular nilang ginagawa is to underreact or not react. And as in nagpa-practice pa sila, pag bago yung staff namin, we'll do role playing and we'll say the most shocking, provocative things na baka marinig nila sa client. And they have to not, they have to keep their face like passive, normal, hindi yung talaga, ano? Yun ang ginagawa ninyo? So basically just like, as a service provider, just focusing on, what the client is saying but not reacting. That is like a more concrete thing to say to someone rather than don't be judgmental. Kasi if you just say, wag kang judgmental, baka mamaya, when the client says something, you're like, pero in your mind, hindi ako nag-judge, wala akong sinabi. So even say, okay, your face, you have to just not, stay passive, not react. And then for parents, it's really just starting those conversations with your kids early. Wag nating ituring ang sexual health as something dirty. Kasi natututunan nila yan sa bahay. So if they have a question about their penis or their vagina and the parents or the caregiver are like, "Uy, hindi, wag mong sabihin yan." Or they say, I always say, wag yung bigyan ng ibang pangalan. Wag yung tawaging pachuchoy or flower or birdie. Like, let's call it what it is. Wala naman tayong code words for our elbow or our knees or our nose. So, bakit tayo gumagawa for our genitals, right? So, most of the time, lalo na if you start as a parent talking to kids or answering their questions when they're young, sobrang iksi lang ng mga conversation. Most of the time, they have a simple question and minsan nagpapanik na yung mga parents, ay naku, anong sasabihin ko? But the kid just wants a short answer. And then you can make it, more detailed as they get older, as they're ready for more details. But really, it's just not being scared of it because, even if someone doesn't have a negative attitude about sexuality na tinatry nilang gawin, if they're acting scared and they're acting like, oh, this is an off-limits topic, that's what the child is going to learn. And then when they start having questions or start doing things, hindi na sila lalapit sa parent or sa trusted adult. So let's just try to be open and, take each situation as it comes.
I think very yung sinasabi ni Ami na #poker face, di ba? Kasi may context clues din yung pagiging judgmental or yung, setting up barriers for other questions. There are other subtexts, hindi lang yung sinasabi. Importante rin yung hindi mo sinasabi. Magpa-practice tayo mamaya, Jonah, ng #pokerface para
Sige, try
malaman.
natin yan.
Di ba? Pwede. Ako naman bago tayo pumunta dun kay Eric tsaka kay Precious, pwede ako mag #SKL, Jonah.
Go, Ana. Gusto namin yan.
Nung lumalaki yung anak ko, nakaka-relate kasi ako dun sa mga sinasabi ni Chad tsaka ni Ami. Nung lumalaki yung anak ko, I also made it a practice to have very open conversations about these topics with them. Kasi parang napaka-plastic ko naman. This is what I write about and then I can't talk about it with my kid. Parang, ano ka naman, te? So, at a very young age, I hope na I made it an open environment for my kid to ask questions, kung ano man siya. So, the questions about the body, about sex, we're not different. We're not treated differently from questions about how do I do my homework? What's math about? Yung mga ganyan. Pero ang favorite ko na kwento kasi normalized yung sexual discussion sa bahay namin. Lagi itong kunikwento to. Nung maliit pa lang siya, eto ako sa bathroom, nagtutoothbrush. And then, my kid barged into the bathroom. Mom! Sabi ko, what? Mom, di ba you had sex? Tapos ako naman, well, not today. But why? Why are you asking? Sabi niya, inis pa siya na, I'm serious! Oo nga! Ano? Bakit? Yes, I had sex. We've talked about this. That's why I had you. Tapos, meron siyang look of relief na, kasi you know what? My best friend, si ganyan, her parents, they never had sex. Ako, naalala ko pa noon, okay, niligpit ko yung toothbrush ko at sinabi ko, honey, I assure you, they had sex many, many, many times. Favorite ko na ikinukwento about open conversations in the home.
No, sana lahat ng parents, kagaya mo, Ana, kagaya nila Ate Ami and ni Ate Chano, that's very open to talking about sex to their kids. And I think another thing is ako din mag-#SKL, no? I think hindi lang parents, no, but older siblings, being the eldest and having two adolescent siblings, no? It's really it's good for me that I had this experience, no, being part of the advocacy on RH. Pero kung siguro hindi ako part nito, hindi rin ako, matatakot din akong ikwento sa mga kapatid ko kung ano ba yung sex, ano ba yung sexuality. But I think it all starts kung yung parents mo hindi sila ganun ka-open. I think as an older sibling, you can always listen to them if they ask, no? Depende rin, it needs pa rin to be age appropriate, no? Kaya malaking tulong din if you have older siblings and you have very open parents. Anne, ikaw din, 'di ba? Eldest, Precious eldest, yung eldest sibling ka rin, no? And ano ba yung mga tingin mo, yung meaning ng non-judgmental listening? And kay Prime, no, in the future, ano ba yung tingin mong masasabi mo sa kanya about sex and sexuality?
So, on my case, ayun nga, mayroon pa akong younger brother, adolescent brother. And ayun, sa tingin ko, mas, since na-experience ko na siya, mas naging open ako, tsaka kahit pa paano knowledgeable sa ganitong bagay kasi nga na-experience ko na siya. So, when my brother is asking me about ano yung things na dapat at hindi dapat na ginagawa or hindi dapat ginagawa ng isang adolescent, parang nakita niya na yun sa akin. Tsaka yung outcome na, ay, dapat pala talaga, ano muna ako, ate, kasi hindi pa ako ready, ganyan. Aral mo na ako, ate, ganun. Minsan gina-joke ko pa siya, oh, King, may girlfriend ka na ba? Ganyan. So sabi niya, ate, ayoko pa muna, bata pa ako eh. Tsaka na lang pag, mga matanda na ako, mas matanda na ako sa inyo, yung mga ganun. So I think, that's, maganda yon kasi parang nagiging close din kami, na alam mo yung walang awkward thing kasi babae ako, lalaki siya. Wala, kasi ate niya ako, kailangan kahit papaano ma-guide ko siya na kahit papaano magkaroon siya ng ng guidance kung if ever na ganito rin yung maging path niya. Pero ayun, it's sa iba naman, may mga kaibigan ako, actually just recently meron akong college classmate before na nag-chat sa akin, because nag-sex sila nung boyfriend niya. Although, isang beses pa lang, pero nag-worry siya nga kung buntis na siya. Sabi ko, ako, on my part, you should, kasi nga natatakot siya eh. Tinanong niya ako, ano bang ginawa ko nung ganun, paano ko ba nalaman? Sabi ko, actually, hindi ko talaga alam. I was just sick, kaya ako nakapagpa-check up, and then dun ko nalaman na ayun nga, buntis na ako. So sinabi ko sa kanya, you should seek help, 'di ba? First sa parents niya, kasi sino bang dapat na makaalam noon, yung parents niya, ganyan. And then yung partner niya, ganun. Kasi mas sila pa rin yung ayoko naman kasing manghimasok, 'di ba? Kumbaga, it's not still my field na mag-advise. So, kung ano lang yung na-experience ko, yun lang yung sinabi ko sa kanya. And I think it's good na from time to time, may mga nakakausap, yung mga teenage girls, women, na may nakakausap sila na mga tao na may hinga nila ng tulong or advice, na hindi sila i-judge. Kasi nga, sa tingin ko, although common yung teenage pregnancy, marami pa rin tao na nakakaranas ng discrimination sa ganitong bagay. So I hope lang na mabawasan, or I don't know, is yung ganong problem sa society.
Thank you, Precious, for that. No, at least nakita natin din on the side of siblings and on the side of a young mom, no, that you're very open to talking about this.
And I think it's really just to create an environment where young people can talk about positive sexuality and relationships. What can how can peers contribute to, creating a supportive environment where teens can just, talk about healthy relationships and positive sexuality?
Because actually dito sa amin, yung youth volunteers namin is very motivated and dedicated na pumunta kung saan-saan to talk about sexuality, to talk about the taboos. And also kasi nga merong pandemic, we're utilizing social media platforms. And also, mas mabuti din sana, Miss Anna, no, if merong support from adults na makaka-provide ng isang safe space for young people, na kung saan pwede sila magtambay lang doon to talk about something na hindi nila masasabi or hindi nila mapapag-usapan inside their home. So dito sa Iloilo, luckily we have a very supportive mayor, our LGU. So we have certain areas na pwedeng pumunta doon yung teenager to talk about anything na gusto niya. Tapos yung peer educator din, yung yung magpro-provide ng information sa kanya if needed. Yeah.
Ang ganda ng discussion natin dito, Jonah. Meron ang dami ng mga hashtag SKL, share ko lang. Pero ang dami ring tips and practical lessons that we can all think about, in the community that we are all part of. Whether it's, we're a friend to a young person, we're a parent, or we're the classmate of a young person, there are ways that we can create environments and safe spaces where we can have informed discussions that are also non-judgmental about positive sexuality and contraception.
Totoo yan, Ana, no? And this is also our last episode, kaya we wanted, to thank everyone who were with us during the whole Spilling the Tea series. This open discussion won't be possible without intergenerational friendships like this one. We built friendships throughout this series, no? And ang daming lumalapit sa akin, Ana, sabi nila na sana daw may part 2.
Maganda rin talaga yung exchange of discussions. I think that's where I see a lot of hope. Cha and Ami were talking about these, we're talking about how before it was a lot of older people that were telling younger people na, oh, hindi para sa'yo yan. Or, very condescending. Pero ngayon, ang dami rin nagiging open in terms of the learning that both young people and older people can have from one another. It's not a one-way street. Hindi lang yung porket ikaw yung nakakatanda, ikaw lang yung merong lessons, life lessons na pwedeng ipasa. There's so many things also that we can learn for our young people. And I think that's the greatest benefit of intergenerational relationships and friendships. Hindi lang yung feeling ko bumabata ako pag kausap kita, Jonah.
Actually, hindi ko naman nakikita na mas matanda ka. Hindi ko nararamdaman. No? It's always been an open friendship.
Ang ganda. Para itong open discussion natin dito sa Spilling the Tea. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us on this discussion about teen pregnancy. We hope that with these stories that we shared today, we were able to bring to you a different perspective on how we can all be part of supporting our teens and our young people in achieving their dreams, just by helping them plan out when they want to have a family, if they even want to have one. Those are decisions that they can make for themselves. We have to empower them and give them the support that they need to do so. Marami pong salamat sa lahat na nanood. I'm Ana P. Santos, a sex and gender columnist for Rappler. Thank you for joining us for this last episode of Spilling the Tea.
And this is John Naturalde from She Decides. So this episode is brought to you by She Decides Philippines. It's a global political movement for youth and by youth. For the last 3 years, She Decides Philippines has rallied for girls and women across the country to stand up, speak out, and change the rules so women and young girls can decide when to have sex and with whom safely. Because when women are empowered to make decisions about their body, they can control of their future and their life. So we live by two simple words, she decides. So sign the manifesto at shedecides.com/manifesto. Follow She Decides Philippines on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at She Decides PH, and sexandsensibilities.com on Facebook.